the recording, and I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Simon Brown from TAFE Queensland SkillsTech, and I'll be presenting about SRTO standards for RTOs, the regulatory requirements for a certain number of clauses that we're going to be reading through. I've started recording. Is that okay?
Yep. That's fine. Thanks, Simon.
And I'd like to introduce Mary Sadowski, my colleague in Ed Quality team, and Matthew Parakis, my colleague in the Ed Quality team. So thank you for being my audience for this session. I've got 12 slides to read through, and you're invited to ask questions as we go along. So I'll share my screen. Let me know if that's okay.
No, that's fine.
So I'm going to put a recording of the presentation on YouTube, so we can access it later. So I'm going to talk about clause 4.1, which is for the RTO to provide accurate and accessible information to prospective and current students. So the standards require the RTO to provide clear and accurate information to students before enrolment to allow students to make informed choices. The standards make it clear that the RTO is solely responsible for all advertising, marketing and recruitment done on its behalf, regardless of the channel or the method used. Can you give me any examples of how we make information about courses available to students?
Through the website, through the TAFE Queensland website.
TAFE Queensland website. Thank you, Matthew. Mary, you were going to say?
I think you advertise a lot on like Facebook.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the RTO is solely responsible for we don't rely on other organisations. So that's clause 4.1. Further to clause 4.1, the information can include advertising or marketing by third parties. The advertising has got to include the RTO code. It's also got to include the nationally recognised training logo and the code and full title of the training product. So full register of all material has got to be kept, and there's got to be a review undertaken to make sure that the materials remain accurate and up to date. So that's clause 4.1. I'd like to move on to clause 1.7, which says the support needs of individual learners must be provided, and learners have to have access to the educational support services necessary for individual learners to meet the requirements of the training product as specified in the training packages or in VET accredited courses. So the RTO must be able to demonstrate that for each student, they identify any additional support that's required and that this support's made available either directly or through arrangements with a third party. At a minimum, support should include identifying particular requirements that students would need to complete each course. For example, literacy, numeracy, English language or physical capability requirements. And it should also include developing strategies to make support available where gaps are identified. So clause 1.7 in a nutshell is about supporting students, keeping students informed, managing complaints and appeals, and having systems and processes in place to identify students' needs. Do you have any questions about clause 1.7?
No.
Thank you, Mary. Matthew, all clear?
All clear. Yep.
Great, thank you. I'll move on to clause 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4 and 2.2. And this is about implementing, monitoring and evaluating training and assessment strategies and practices. So the ETAS, we call it an ETAS, the TAS has got to be consistent with the requirements of training packages, the training and assessment strategy. In the TAS, the RTO determines the amount of training according to each learner's existing skills, knowledge and experience. the delivery mode, the number of units and or modules being delivered as a proportion of a full qualification. 1.3 gives the regulations for the sufficiency of trainers, the support services, the learning resources and facilities. 1.4 is about the RTO meeting all requirements specified in the relevant training package or VET accredited course. And 2.2 is a requirement to systematically monitor the RTO's training and assessment strategies and practices to ensure ongoing compliance with Standard 1, and systematically evaluates and uses the outcomes of the evaluations to continually improve. So 1.1 is about the components of training and assessment strategy. You've got the training product, the core and elective components, target group, mode of delivery, entry requirements, duration and scheduling, assessment resources, methods and timing, learning resources, human resources, physical resources, strategies for standalone and single units or skill sets, and strategies for assessment only pathways. The requirement for 1.2 is about the volume of learning. So for each level of certificate, there's an increasing volume of learning from between 600 to 12 hours for certificate 1 to 600 to 1200 hours for certificate 2. Certificate 3 is 1200 to 2400 hours, and certificate 4 is 600 to 2400 hours. So that's at certificate level, but then at diploma level, it increases again for diploma 1200 to 2400 hours, advanced diploma 1800 to 2400 hours, graduate certificates 600 to 1200 hours, and graduate diploma 1200 to 2400 hours. The RTO is required to develop and implement approaches to ensure that students gain all relevant skills and knowledge. Now, so this is the volume of learning. We also need to outline the amount of training. Can you tell me the difference between volume of learning and amount of training?
So is one for the students and one for the teachers? Is that?
No, it's all about the students. Matthew?
So the volume of learning is the amount of time overall that it would take should take the student to learn. The amount of the training given to them by the RTO and delivered to them by the teachers.
Correct. So the volume of learning includes the amount of training. So it doesn't work the other way around. So the volume of learning is about the total amount of training. That's correct. So okay. That's what we're talking about here. But the amount of training that is specified in the training and assessment strategy is the amount of time that they're in class. So volume of learning can include some out of class activities as well. Thank you. Sufficiency of trainers is required by clause 1.3 in our training and assessment strategy. We have a delivery plan on the left, and we have each unit assigned to one or more teachers on the right. And the green box indicates that the teacher is qualified in that unit. So this is a healthy looking matrix where every teacher is teaching every unit and every teacher is qualified to teach every unit. So the sufficiency of trainers is demonstrated in educator profiles that are maintained by teachers and provided for ASQA's inspection. The clauses 1.13 to 1.16 further specifies what skilled trainers and assessors should look like. 1.13 specifies the vocational competencies, the current industry skills, and the current knowledge and skills in vocational training and learning. 1.14 specifies the training and assessment credential, which is basically TAE 40110 or its successor 40116, which includes ASS 502 and LLN 401. 1.15 specifies a credential for assessment only teachers, which is just the skill set. And 1.16 specifies professional development requirements for teachers. So in review, what we talked about was a series of clauses from SRTO standards. We talked about clause 4.1, providing the RTO has to provide accurate and accessible information to prospective and current students. We talked about clause 1.7, the RTO must support the needs of individual learners. And clauses 1.1 to 1.4, the training and assessment strategy, which includes the amount of training, the sufficiency of trainers, and all training package requirements. And we also talked about clauses 1.13 to 1.16, which further discusses training, trainer and assessor industry competency currency and vet skills currency, also the trainer's vet competency, the assessor's vet, the assessor vet competency, and the trainer and assessor professional development. So that's all I had to talk about today. Did you have any questions or additions to the content that I provided?
No, I don't, Simon.
Okay, thanks, Mary. How about you, Matthew?
No, that was all very clear.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to end the slideshow. And I'll stop sharing the screen. And I'll stop the recording. Thank you for joining me today.
Oh, you're welcome.
No worries.